Whew. Good morning, everyone. It is meeting day. And it's meeting day for with a bonus. Got that developers meeting today as well. So it's going to be a long day. And I've got a lot of stuff I've been thinking about. The primary thing I want to talk to you about right now is about the terminal. I'm just trying to make a case here. So when I started in computing, when I was like 10 or whatever, we had a Packard Bell computer. And back then in the 90s, people were like, people can't just use a computer. You have to make levels of abstraction for them. So in the computer, when you fired up a Packard Bell computer, you loaded into this like house that you would walk through in the computer. You would navigate yourself in still frame progression of images. You're like, I'm walking down the hall, go forward, click, click, click. It's like a point and click, like a rendered adventure game. So then you would walk into, the living room to go to the TV. And when you would look at the TV, you'd get access to whatever the video watching program was. And it was all very canned, and it was all very gated. It was a gated garden, kind of. It is actually what Eden is. It's literally a walled garden. So you find yourself this interface. And this interface is what allows you to talk to the computer. And someone made that interface. So eventually I figured out how to get out of it. You would actually walk into the computer room and touch the computer in order to use the computer. The Inception theme starts to play in the background, and Troy gets copy struck. So eventually I figured out how to get to Windows 3.11. And I don't remember how, but I figured out how to get there. And then it was just like, what on earth is this? Like, I'd never seen a GUI before, a GUI like that before, an operating system interface. And once I got there, I was like, oh, well, here's the program that I was looking for. I don't have to walk down the hallway and find all this garbage. Okay, this is cool. Yeah, okay, this is epic. It was faster. It was better. I didn't have to deal with other garbage. Flash forward, years. I realized I want to be a programmer of some kind, or rather, I wanted to be a hacker. And to be a hacker, you're a programmer. I know this from having watched the very detailed documentary Hackers, starring Angelina Jolie. And the movie Sneakers. Yeah. But I knew you needed to be a programmer. So I'm like, how do you do this whole programming thing? And we got a copy of Borland C++, which was a terrible idea. But after failing pretty miserably there, just failing to understand any of it, I was like, so let's try something different. And that piece of software was like $100. And I didn't want to just be like, okay, well, I give up. So I found out that there's this thing that apparently has all kinds of programming stuff for free. It's called Lyduck, apparently. And so around this time, I had there were a couple computers. I was putting together computers at the time. It was fun and technical and all that. And when I'm going this way. That's interesting. When I put computers together, I was like, all right, yeah, Windows, got it. But this Linux thing was like the opposite of Windows. And be completely transparent here. It probably took me a month to get a GUI, because I didn't have, this was the early days of the internet. Comparatively, it just didn't, you couldn't Google, you didn't have a Stack Exchange. Linux was just fledgling. It was new, and it didn't have the support. It just plain did not have the support. And if you've ever spent some time in Microsoft DLL hell, try dependency hell. Wow. You know, apt-get and yum. Oh man, unbelievable. But anyways, that's another story. Eventually I got Linux installed, and then I was just like at this command prompt, and I was like, okay, did I do it? Like, what the hell? What is this? So I figured out how to get logged in. Like, okay, well, in order to get a GUI, I need to modify these xconfig files. Oh my gosh, xconfig files. Man, you kids these days have it so easy. Modify these xconfig files, and how the heck do I modify them without a mouse? With just a blinking cursor. So I get introduced to Vim, or VI probably at the beginning. I understand how I'm editing text files, how to move my cursor around using just the keyboard in that text file, how to change things, how to save the files, and how to exit Vim. That's very important. Very important, learning how to exit Vim. Some say Troy's still in Vim. But I got access, so I had access to a terminal, and I was playing around in it. Playing is a rough term, but like I was in it, I was using it, and I was like, all right, this is good. I like this. And then I got my GUI working. Like I got X running at a normal resolution, and I said, great. And I opened it up, and I was like, cool, now I want to edit a document, and I double click it, and it opens in gedit. And I'm like, what is this? I have to use arrow keys and click my mouse? No, not okay. Hey look, a terminal. I can open up a terminal inside the GUI. Awesome. So that's just like the beginning of me getting a taste of what real computing was, because even at that point, like, there are a couple things that I picked up intuitively that I didn't even understand at the time what I was looking at or what I was thinking during that period. So much of me has changed since then, but there's a few things that were just like inside me from the beginning. And the understanding that when I got this computer, and this computer was a total hack job. It had really old parts. It was just spun together, and it worked. Like, I needed to match hardware to Linux. Linux didn't have the support. So I had this really old tower and old hardware on it, and I was like, this thing's gonna run terribly. And the dang thing was so fast. It was zippy. It was snappy. It was quick. And I'm like, this is like a few years old. This hardware's a few years old. It wasn't fancy. Oh, that's what it was. I think it was from when I was a kid. It was like our work PC. No way. Couldn't have been a 386. No, that's right. It was a 300 megahertz. 300 megahertz. So I started playing around with this Linux thing that supposedly has free programming stuff in it. And the free programming stuff it had was my target, my objective was to get to Perl. So once I was in Perl, I started playing around with stuff. And I'm like, oh, this is pretty quick. And then I started breaking down things to their most simple level. I started writing programs to help myself do things. And then I started to realize how fast the computer really was. Like, in a terminal, with even a scripting language. I'm not talking about, a couple hundred milliseconds, saving a couple hundred milliseconds or optimizing for embedded systems. I'm talking about just a regular old, and it was old at that point, home computer. Could do amazing calculations just in the blink of an eye. And I started to realize that there was just, much like the Packard Bell, where you're walking through a room. I'm walking down the hall. I would like to use the computer. Click, click, turn left, click, Find the computer. Approach the computer. Click on the computer. Now I'm using the computer. Like, I wanted to be there, fast. And in the terminal, you can do that. And I was thinking about this yesterday when I found out about. I hope I don't butcher this. If I do, I'll put it in the description. I think it's called WTTR.in, and it's a weather app? It's not even a weather app. The weather is something that I've been very annoyed with for a long time, just because, you know, I lived in Southern California, which was like, the weather is nothing. The weather is meaningless. The weather is the weather. Like, the weather's good. It might rain today. Okay? Here, like in Kentucky, the weather matters. It really matters. And you get to talk to other people about the weather. It's like a little unifying thing. I didn't understand, shouldn't we be talking about the weather? It was as a little phrase or a joke or something. But the weather is important here. So I'm like, okay, I'll get a weather app. And my phone had a weather app. And the phone weather app, oh my gosh, I'm so... Dan Lyduck. Listen to Dan Lyduck. I think his name's Dan. I'll put it in the description if it's wrong. But the weather app. The weather app on my phone works pretty well. But I wanted to get like real feel. I wanted to know what it was. And you had to click into the app, and then Android would take forever to load. And then once it loaded into the app, I would click more, and then it would open a browser. And then the browser would go to whatever website happened to be doing it that day. And then that website would pause and wait and load ads. And then I would scroll down to the day of the week that I clicked already, because I still had to look for it, because the webpage wanted me to scroll down, because the website owner wanted me to scroll down so that I would scroll past more ads and then see the actual information that I wanted. I wanted 2 numbers. That's all I wanted. I wanted 2 numbers. And I had to go through so many steps just to get to those numbers. It's something that should be automatic, and I was writing apps at that point. I'm like, I can write an app that does this. So why is this app so bad? And the answer to that question is, it is intentional. It is, once is accidental, twice is coincidence, 3 times is enemy action. They're pushing you into these ads, pushing you into this stuff in order to monetize, because they got to pay their bandwidth expense. Well, what bandwidth expense? I wanted 2 numbers. You don't have a bandwidth expense if you just send 2 numbers. Oh, the weather thing. Telnet to, and you can do this on Windows. Open up a command prompt. Windows doesn't even come with Telnet anymore. Open up a putty terminal, whatever. Telnet to WTTR.in, like India, IN. And hit enter. And you get a weather forecast for the next 3 days in your terminal. And there's no ads. And it's as fast as you can click. That's why I can't stand people using phones for everything these days. The phone, yes, the phone is spying on you. Yeah, I know. I used to be that person. I've kind of come around. I understand that it's just going to happen. But computing didn't used to be like this. When you're in that terminal, I'm sorry. This is the thing that I intuited. I picked up immediately. I guess it is kind of a workflow thing too. It's like my workflow is, I want to interact with a digital device to receive those 2 numbers. I want the temperature, and I want the evaluation of what the weather is going to be like. Is it going to be 70 degrees and rainy? Is it going to be 50 degrees and snowing? 50 degrees and snowing. Yeah, see, that's how long I've been in Kentucky. I just want this information. and I want it easily presented. And I actually went to, like, I even put a little weather widget on Emacs, and it's having problems because Yahoo's API, Yahoo's shutting down their API or something. But the fact was, I wanted to get X information. So my brain says, I want this number. How do I get to this number? And anything that lies between me and this number is garbage. It's nothing. It makes no sense. Why is it here? And in some cases you need to apply context to numbers, but wait, I'll decide if I want context. I want the computer to do what I want it to do. I don't want it to do what Google's telling it to do, what AdBlock's processing it for whoever the banner ads are being generated for, whoever the cookies are being sent to. The computer right now, your phone especially, doesn't work for you. That's why I was saying people should be using computers. Computers are more powerful than phones, and the phones are slow intentionally. They are bloated intentionally. The operating systems are bloated intentionally. The operating systems collect information from you. This slows them down and sacrifices your privacy intentionally. To what ends? What for? I don't know. But they do it intentionally. This is where I get weird about it, because technically all this garbage and all these people slowing things down, the internet is driven by ads for the most part. It's also driven by pornography, but the point of it is that the capitalist system feeds this in a good way. If there's no money to be made, video games and porn drove computing up and up and up to the gigahertz range and to bandwidth higher, and built the internet basically, because there was no reason except for video games and porn for the internet to be faster. Because when I want to get a web page, I'm processing a small amount of text that's being translated into a markup language and then presented on my screen. Imagine, pick your favorite news site right now. Whatever your favorite news site is. You go there to that news site and you look at about maybe 20 different things. The things that you want, your workflow, you start here, you say, I want those 20 things. And on the path there to those 20 things, you get probably about 10,000. 10,000 different things that are unrelated to what you're going for, that all happen in between. And then you get to the dang page and you're bombarded visually with all kinds of clutter and garbage, things vying for your attention, things that fill up this buffer up here that you have in your brain that says, I'm going to process X, Y, and Z, and your brain's just like, wow, look at that. Oh, look at that. I wonder about that. Because you can't stop your brain from doing that. It just does it. You're processing all this extra stuff. It has an impact. And you just want those 20 things. I just want to know the weather forecast. And I have a supercomputer in my hand, the palm of my hands. And I can't get it. I want 2 numbers. And I have a supercomputer, and I can't get them without looking at myriad other things. Literally. So, here's another good example. I was working with a customer, and he uses cPanel, which I know it's cringy, but it's still, a lot of companies find themselves there. Businesses, and especially the small and medium businesses, find themselves on old tech and old software. So you, the programmer with the bleeding edge technology, can be like, oh, well, that's dumb. Yeah, if you want to work for them, you're still going to work through it. You're going to interface with it. So cPanel is clunky and annoying. It's pretty well featured, I think. It's a pretty neat app, but it was a pretty neat app like a decade ago. But it works. But it's slow. You know, there's like categories to walk through. You want to figure out how to get to this app or this config item. Well, if you put me on the box, I know exactly where the config item is. It's in the same place. But if you don't, if I'm on the cPanel, then I'm like searching through this slow web interface, these layers of garbage. I'm walking down the hallway to get to the computer, and I'm already on a computer. It's just frustrating, and it's slow, and it robs you of your time, and it robs you of your attention. All of that stuff, images you're constantly being bombarded with. When all I want is telnet wttr.in. And you can even do a / this is brilliant, by the way, / the city you're in, / and I did Lexington, and it came up with Kentucky, Lexington. There's multiple Lexingtons in America. They're named after the Battle of Lexington and Concord, usually. So there's a few Lexingtons, but it's doing a GUIP trace to determine probably the most likely Lexington I'm referring to. Unless there's actual city codes for the other Lexingtons, and Kentucky just happens to be the lucky one that gets the proper Lexington. There's the weather, right there. One command away, using bloody telnet, which is older than I am. And you know what? It's better than the damn weather app. Objectively. So, when I'm in cPanel, hunting and pecking around, heaven help you try to use the file editor in cPanel, running through a web interface, through a web server, to a program that's modifying files on the file system. So what do? I dig through their menu system to get to my SSH access. I give myself SSH access. SSH is a secure shell prompt. It allows you to connect one computer from the terminal on one computer to the terminal on another computer. So I connect to the terminal on the server, and oh, it's fast. It works. Well, how do I get to this file? Well, I know where the file is. VI space, whack, destination to the file, enter. I'm editing the file. All my, at least if you choose your preferred programs correctly, all your preferred programs are there. Everything loads as fast as possible. Editing files as fast as possible. That's why Vim is awesome. That's why keyboards are awesome. You edit things, you do things as fast as possible. And until they figure out a way to link your brain into some input device or input network, your fingers and buttons on a keyboard will get you where you want to get as fast as possible in a terminal. In a terminal. And nowhere else. Playing point and click adventure games. I've been looking. This is part of this. I've been looking for handheld terminal devices, handheld Linux terminals, for years now. And I had a Sharp Zaurus. SL500, I think it was, which was a small handheld computing platform that ran Linux, or a flavor of Linux. and I had a flip out keyboard. And I had a HP Jornada. And that sucker would run Linux. Although I did run it in Windows for a long time. Windows CE, because the support was not great. But I wanted handheld, and I wanted fast. I wanted the terminal. I wanted the terminal in the palm of my hands. But it's only as fast as your transition. This thing decides what you want to do. And then you got to take that computer and translate from here into here. And the keyboard, and all these 10 nice fingers that you've got, or 9 or however many you got, that is your fastest way of getting that information out. It is the fastest way for you to work. I guess it's just a bonus that the terminal's fast just in general. And there's a number of websites for people who want to learn to use the terminal, put more things in the terminal. One of the cool things about browsing the web in a terminal, that's a good example. So you're programming something, you're working on something, and you're like, oh wait, what is the... What do I get? I think it's the Python split syntax, or the join syntax. It's a little weird. It's like inverted, kind of, because you start with the string. And I'm like, oh, I need this information. How do I get it? Well, I open up a Chrome browser, which hopefully I've already got one open. I Google Stack Exchange whatever, and I pull up this information, and I've got seconds into this. I'm clicking through bits. I'm being bombarded with ads. I'm seeing other things, Google text ads. I have everything else pretty much blocked. And it's all coming through, and I'm getting to one line of information. One line. I've got sucking up memory with the browser. I'm listening to music on YouTube. YouTube or Chromium is killing my memory usage. It's sucking up all the RAM. To the point that the website I'm actually browsing on to do the work, to do my, not my REPL, but to test, to evaluate my code changes, is slow. I just want to listen to music on YouTube. And then pause for ads, of course. So what is it? Not MVP. MPV. Mike Papa Victor. That will let me, from a command line, stream YouTube audio. And actually control a video as well. But I just want to listen to music. And I can listen to it in the terminal now. I don't have Chrome sucking up all the resources. I don't have Chrome sucking up all my information either. So I take that the reference data that I have, that I want to remember how to do a Python join, and I drop that in a cheat sheet file on my file system, because I want quick access to it. I want the steps between me and where I want to get to be as short as possible, and the terminal can do that. And if the data that you get out of whatever terminal utility is too much, well, guess what? There's a terminal utility to pare that down. And if you wind up piping all this input, this through this, through this, through this, through this, you've got this big, long, honking command. By the way, type FG, Foxtrot Golf. and it'll open the command that you last ran, or the command the command that you last ran in your choice of text editor. Also, Ctrl+xe, Ctrl X-ray, Ctrl echo on the command you're actively typing in the terminal. It'll take that command that's already typed out and then bring it into an editor for you to modify and then execute. But you can pare down all that information. And when you come up with this really long, command line prompt that's super long that you don't want to have to remember, you just alias it. That's it. And then from then on, you type one thing. And you get right to it. In the terminal, I probably couldn't type in Python join. I'll probably make like a cheat command that just references this data. Or why would I even do that? It's a grep. It's a simple grep. I'll grep join. Yeah, grep join in Python, or grep join Python, or I'll make a keyword or a tag or something like that on my cheat sheets file, which I'll probably change the extension of. That way I can search all my cheat sheets in one command. And in one command, I'm going to get that information. Whereas before, I would have been browsing for a thing, opening a browser, looking through garbage. It's a waste of time. It robs you of attention. And it's stealing your information to sell you stuff, to open your wallet, or worse. Not so in the terminal. Well, this has been quite rambly. I believe that's my contact. So, I have... This is a long one. I've been trying to make a Raspberry Pi Zero more portable so that I can have a terminal in the palm of my hand, but also a keyboard so that I can make talking to that computer fast. I can get what I want out of it quickly. I'm going to have a Raspberry Pi that has a screen, a 320, 340 by 240. 320 by 240 screen. Tiny. Teeny tiny. But it's all you need if you're in the terminal. It's all you need if you want to get from here to here. And this transition is as short as possible. It's all you need. Now, I'm not going to say that you're going to be able to watch YouTube videos on it. It's not what it's for. Yeah, that's why I kind of respect the Raspberry Pi and these small handheld devices. If they had the extra overhead, the extra gigahertz, the bonus, the bloat, or if they had the ability to accommodate the bloat of sending all kinds of extra garbage everywhere, the Raspberry Pi Zero has one core. As soon as you make a request, the CPU pegs. It's 100%. It's not doing extra stuff. When they were designing them, they were like, we don't have Wi-Fi, but we're working on it. That's where the NSA went and talked to the Raspberry Pi Foundation, which is not an American foundation, by the way. The NSA went and talked to them and convinced them to put a small antenna in their chip. No. The chip is this big. It does almost everything. It had to be custom designed just for this express purpose. And they still didn't have Wi-Fi. That would have been a great feature for capitalists to add and say, look, we did it. We squeezed it in. But they couldn't do it. Like, I trust the limitations of a Raspberry Pi. That Intel CPU, who knows? You can't put a tiny Bluetooth antenna inside a chip. Yeah, can't you? What about a different frequency? I mean, I'm not gonna code on this size screen. I really like to be able to see more of the code. That works very well for me. But for little things, for the weather, for managing my tasks, for looking up specific to-do items, this is more than enough. Because I'm getting 2 numbers. This is all I want. Like, you get that tiny screen and you pop open a browser, and the first thing you see is window decoration, title bar. You're opening a web browser. This is the web browser. Okay. Now we're opening a menu bar. File, edit, view. Okay. Now here's your button toolbar. Back, forward, left, right, refresh, URL bar. Do that in a terminal. And the keyboard is your back button. And the keyboard, modal editing. Use the keyboard to get to your URL bar. Use the keyboard to go back and forward. Use the keyboard to follow links. Use the keyboard. All that extra garbage that a mouse would click on goes away. Suddenly you've got double the screen real estate just from title bars on this tiny screen. And it's faster for it. People use cell phones and they think that this is a computing experience. Not even close. Not even close. This is why I don't buy new hardware. This is why I've got old laptops and old stuff. New just means bloat. New just means more CPU cycles to spend monitoring you. More CPU cycles to waste. That was what really got me. It's like a computer. It's an amazing calculating device, and it just spends 90% of its life doing nothing. Sitting. It's a huge, gigantic waste. Or worse, it's spent on the wrong things. Those CPU cycles are used on the wrong things. This is very meandering. I have on their way a couple of what are they called? Pocket chips. Made by Next Thing Company. Pocket Chip was a neat little Linux terminal and, programming experiment and, gaming platform and. It's a very cool device. But it seems like they didn't monetize it correctly because the company shut down. It, in particular, has it has features built into it the Raspberry Pi does not, which fit my specific use case. The fact that it's a handheld Linux terminal with a keyboard built into it and has a little pencil stand. The pencil stand. You can't forget the pencil stand. Those are just bonuses. But I want to be able to interface with the terminal as quickly and efficiently as I can. I want the power of the terminal wherever I am. And I want to be able to have, this is why I'm talking about these to-do list things in my calendar. Oh, heavens, a calendar. Oh, Gmail. Ugh. Email is bad enough. Gmail is terrible. It's a good service. And, technically it's a good service. It does a whole bunch of other stuff that's not good, but technically it's a good service. Email, like if I'm on a system and I want to look at my email, I'm like, all right, well, how do I look at my email? I open up a browser. And Gmail is like the memory leakiest of all websites. You leave Gmail running long enough, you're just done. Your computing is over. Especially in Chromium. Then you have to kill Chromium. Kill all your tabs and then come back. At least they made it really easy to come back to it, which I think is a developer feature of them going, gosh, this is bad. Gosh, I have to reboot this thing. How do I get back to where I was? Oh, instead of fixing it so I don't have to reboot and it doesn't suck up all my memory, I'll just make it so it's easier to get back to where I was. Like, all I care about is I want to read the subject line. Did someone send me an email? So you can use in a terminal. It's a little hacky. It's a little hard to get it so that Gmail will send this information. It's not IMAP. So you can request this information, but you can look at your email in your terminal. So now I've got this. Remember this tiny screen? Whatever could you use that for? I'm checking my email on it. Not checking it well, but I am seeing if someone responded to me. I am seeing what's in there. I am cleaning up extra garbage. I am working in there. And it's not sucking up a gig of RAM. A gig of RAM. Man, I'm just a curmudgeon at this point. I just turned 35 on the 30th. So I feel extra curmudgeon-y. Like, kids these days with their computers and cell phones and their internets. I don't want an internet-enabled crockpot. I want the crockpot to crockpot. I want the refrigerator to refrigerate. I don't want to I don't want to download updates on my refrigerator. I don't want my car to crash. I mean, software crash. I don't want the display on my car to crash. We've gone too far. It's time to go back. We have to go back. We need to undo what we did. And that's the thing is, if porn and video gaming wasn't driving the CPU market and the memory market and the hardware and the internet speed, we would be on dial-up. It's a wonder we have high speed. It's amazing. But if we're on dial-up and all we got is 56K, 9600 baud, there's no way. There's no way you fit all that garbage into a web page. That's a huge waste. No one would go to your web page. It would take 30 minutes to load. But you would be almost guaranteed to get the information that you wanted in that package. It would be 1/100th the size, 1/1000th the size, actually. But if you went to weather.com, by God, you're going to get the weather. It would be 1/1000th the size, but you would get the weather. You'd get those two numbers, and you'd probably get 100 other things rather than 10,000. But now we've got gigs coming out of our ears. We've got ads coming out of our ears. So try some terminal computing. You know, kind of go back to a simpler time. Ask yourself, what do I want out of this web page? This is workflow as much as it's anything. What do I need out of this web page? What do I want, and how do I get it faster? You know, even just that Python join command, taking that information and putting it somewhere else where you control it, that's great. Oh, the idea, the always on internet thing. See, when someone says that Xbox has to be always connected to the internet, people freak out. They're like, yeah, that's gross. But when you're like, okay, well, what if I want to get other data that my computer could easily process, but I want to get it offline? Everyone's like, well, you can't. That's impossible. Supercomputers in our pockets. And 1/10,000th of what it processes is what we want. It's a good place to end. Thank you for listening to the incoherent ramblings of an old man. Old man yells at cloud. Old man yells at GUI. Just pick a thing and try to, like, I'm doing my to-do list in the terminal. And I have a simple plain text file. It doesn't have garbage in it. There's no proprietary formats to it. It doesn't have encoding so that if one bit gets flipped, the whole thing gets corrupt. I don't have to back it up 10,000 times using different systems, binary systems, because it's just text. It doesn't care. And I'm doing it in the terminal, and I'm doing it fast, and it's working great. And then I use my Android phone as an interface to look at that text file, on the go. Well, not for long, because pretty soon I'm